From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. The Pro-Israel Anti-Defamation League, or ADL, has increased its lobbying efforts 16-fold, reaching about $1.6 million this year. The lobbying aims to promote a contentious definition of anti-Semitism across federal agencies. While historically combating anti-Semitism, the ADL's recent focus on lobbying marks a significant departure. Critics argue the increased spending targets criticism of Israel and peace groups supporting Palestinian rights. The House recently passed the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which was lobbied for by the ADL. It aims to codify a definition of anti-Semitism that potentially restricts speech around Israel. Stephanie Fox of the group Jewish Voice for Peace has accused the ADL of influencing media narratives to criminalize anti-war activism. Experts describe this surge in lobbying as breathtaking. They say it reflects a broader shift in public opinion on Israel, evident in nationwide anti-war demonstrations. The bill awaits Senate consideration amid growing debate over free speech and Israel-Palestine relations. The University of California Academic Workers Union has authorized a strike in response to the school administration's crackdown on free Palestine protests. United Auto Workers Local 4811 represents over 48,000 academic workers. Union co-president Raphael Jamie said the university's unfair practices and violations of free speech were the reason for the vote. It approved the strike after hundreds of demonstrators, including union members, were arrested. Although this authorization does not guarantee a strike will happen, union leaders can initiate a work stoppage at any time. This could potentially disrupt classes and research across the University of California's 10 campuses. The president of Sonoma State University is facing administrative leave. This is over his backing of an academic boycott of Israel. In response to calls from groups representing the Free Palestine movement, the university declared a complete halt to collaborations with Israeli counterparts. But California State University Chancellor Mildred Garcia, in a statement, revealed that President Mike Lee had been placed on administrative leave. She said the president had sent a message without the appropriate approvals. Sonoma State is a public liberal arts college in Sonoma County, California, that is one of the smallest members of the California State University system. A coalition of federal officers, U.S. veterans, and allies convened outside the White House earlier this week, demanding immediate action to halt the violence in Gaza. They also criticized unconditional U.S. backing for Israel. They gathered to express solidarity with Palestine, commemorating the Nakba, and urging a ceasefire. The Nakba, which means catastrophe in Arabic, refers to the 1948 ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by Israel. Anil Shalin, a former U.S. State Department officer, highlighted the complicity of the U.S. in the conflict. She had resigned due to the administration's unwavering support for Israel. Shalin emphasized the need for accountability within the government and criticized a lack of attention to human rights abuses in Palestine.
The death toll continued to rise as it just became more and more clear what intentions the Israeli government had for the people of Gaza, that of ethnic cleansing and arguably the crime of genocide. I tried to do what I could on the inside. I signed a dissent cable. This ended up being the one that was leaked in early November. State Department did not like that. I ended up co-authoring a dissent cable with colleagues focused in particular on the human rights angle that we sent up later in November. And I was wondering, why aren't more people resigning? Thus far, it had only been Josh. And it just seemed to me that there were so many people who were opposed to what was happening inside the U.S. government and this total lack of accountability.
The Biden administration recently told Congress that it plans to send a $1 billion package of military aid to Israel, despite opposition to a full-scale invasion of Rafah in southern Gaza. In related news, a Jewish appointee at the U.S. Interior Department has resigned in protest of President Joe Biden's unwavering support for Israel's war on Gaza. Lily Greenberg Call, citing her lifelong involvement in the Jewish community, condemned Israel's offensive in Gaza, emphasizing the loss of innocent lives and the violation of international law. She accused the U.S. of enabling Israeli war crimes and criticized Biden's stance as contributing to the perpetuation of apartheid and occupation. Call's resignation marks the fifth public resignation in protest of the administration's pro-Israel stance. Previous resignations include Hala Rahadit from the State Department and Tariq Habash from the Education Department. Analysts say Call's departure highlights growing dissent within the administration regarding its handling of the Israel-Palestine conflict. The 191st All-University Commencement for class of 2024 at Yankee Stadium of the New York University was marked by protests. University President Linda Mills' speech saw some students leaving, while others wore Palestinian keffiyehs in solidarity with Gaza. Similar protests have erupted across American and European campuses, with over 2,000 arrests since April 18th. Debates over free speech, the right to protest, and accusations of anti-Semitism have polarized campuses. While attention has focused on clashes at Columbia University and UCLA, among others, Europe has also seen demonstrations. South Africa urges World Court emergency measures against Israeli offensive in Gaza. Details after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. South Africa has concluded its arguments at the International Court of Justice, or ICJ, seeking emergency measures to address Israel's military actions in Gaza's Rafah region. The country contends that the situation in Rafah has worsened, necessitating immediate intervention to prevent further humanitarian catastrophe. South African Ambassador Vusi Mandonsela emphasized the urgent need for Israel to cease operations, allow humanitarian aid, and permit access for international investigators and journalists.
Although this present application was triggered by the unfolding horrific situation in Rafah, Israel's genocidal onslaught across Gaza has intensified over the past few days, also warranting the attention of this court.
South Africa's requests include Israel's immediate cessation of military activities in Gaza, unimpeded access for humanitarian aid, and regular reporting to the court on measures taken. This marks South Africa's fourth request for provisional measures from the ICJ since January, citing Israel's ongoing disregard for previous court orders. Egypt, Turkey, Nicaragua, and Colombia have joined South Africa's case, urging Israel to comply with its obligations as an occupying power. Lawyer Adila Hassim, a member of the legal team in the South Africa versus Israel case at the World Court, told the ICJ that since its last ruling in January, Israel has killed 11,500 civilians, the majority of them children. She notes that since Israel began its incursion in Rafah, 600,000 Palestinians there have now been forced to flee, with nowhere safe to go.
Israel has the power over each and every Palestinian man, woman, and child in Gaza to determine if they live or how they die. History warns us what happens next. We cannot simply stand by waiting for that to happen again.
The ICJ, which is tasked with resolving disputes between states, has previously ordered Israel to prevent acts of genocide under the Genocide Convention. Israel will present its defense on Friday. Israeli attacks targeting homes and a market have killed 39 Palestinians and injured 64 others in Gaza in the past 24 hours. The Jabalia refugee camp has been hit hardest. In Khan Yunis, Israeli shelling killed 5 people, including a pregnant woman in the Al-Fallujah area. Fighting also broke out in the north of Gaza. Some reports say Hamas fighters are attacking Israeli troops with small arms, rockets, and explosive devices. The International Rescue Committee says the scale of the crisis in southern Gaza is beyond imagination as Israeli ground troops enter Rafah. The mass exodus continues as people flee to other areas in search of food and water. The Israeli military announced that 5 of its soldiers had been killed by shelling on Wednesday in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. 2 tanks in the area opened fire on a house where the deputy commander of the Israeli battalion was stationed, the military said. Meanwhile, Israeli media reports a deep rift in Israel's war cabinet, with Defense Minister Yoav Gallant questioning Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's unspecified plans for the post-Gaza war period. Since October 7th, at least 35,272 Palestinians have been killed and 79,205 wounded in Israel's war on Gaza. The Palestinian Red Crescent reports that over 15,000 children have been killed by Israeli attacks in the last 7 months. Residents of the Rukban camp, home to 7,000 displaced individuals on the Syrian-Jordanian border, protested against the siege imposed by the Bashar al-Assad regime and its allies. Regime forces, composed of the army and Iranian-backed foreign terrorist groups, are blocking the entry of essential supplies such as fuel, flour, food, medicine, firewood, and baby formula into the camp. The blockade has prevented essential supplies from entering it for over 40 days. The protesters are calling for immediate international intervention to alleviate the dire humanitarian situation in Rukban camp. India has started granting citizenship under the Citizenship Amendment Act, or CAA, to non-Muslim immigrants from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. The law excludes Muslims. The Indian Home Ministry confirmed the issuance of the first set of citizenship certificates to 14 people from neighboring countries during a heated election campaign. Home Minister Amit Shah hailed it as a historic day, emphasizing the end of a long wait for persecuted Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi, and Christian communities. The CAA faces opposition in states governed by opposing parties, sparking nationwide protests since its passage in 2019. Numerous petitions against the law are pending in the Supreme Court. In Paris, Uyghur activist Gulbahar Jalilova was moved to a secure location after a concerning encounter with unidentified individuals outside her home. Last week, 8 strangers approached her residence in a black van, persistently buzzing her unit and calling her phone. Although she was not present, neighbors witnessed the scene. Dilnur Reyhan, president of the European Uyghur Institute, confirmed the incident, expressing Jalilova's fear upon seeing the group suspected to be Chinese nationals. Reyhan reported the incident to police, revealing the group's dubious claim of visiting a Japanese rock garden. She highlighted the increasing intimidation faced by Uyghur activists, citing personal experiences. The incident occurred shortly after Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to France amid protests from Tibetan, Uyghur, and Chinese activists. While counter-protests were subdued, a confrontation involving masked individuals accusing Uyghur Congress President Dolkun Issa raised suspicions of orchestrated disruption. Issa attributed the uproar to Chinese influence. The Chinese embassy in Paris did not respond to media inquiries. President Joe Biden and ex-President Donald Trump have agreed to engage in 2 debates scheduled for June 27th on CNN and September 10th on ABC News. This marks their first face-to-face encounter in more than 3 years. While final details are being sorted out, the decision to participate in these debates has injected energy into a relatively stagnant campaign season. Both candidates view these debates as opportunities to sway voters. Biden proposed the debates, stipulating they bypass the nonpartisan organization overseeing presidential debates since 1988. He and his team are advocating for earlier debates to allow voters to assess the candidates well before early voting commences in September. They are also requesting a studio setting with automated microphones to enforce time limits. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. Your support is needed now more than ever to continue our mission of providing informative, educational, and inspiring content to Muslims in North America and around the world. Donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.